All right, guys, welcome back to the Addictively Speaking podcast. I'm your host, James, and tonight I have Coaching with Jodie on the podcast. How are you, Jodie? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, James?
I'm all right. Welcome to the Addictively Speaking podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for taking your time out to come talk with us. For those who don't know, let everybody know who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So, I'm Jodie, and obviously I've been drawn to this podcast because of the title of it, Addictively Speaking, covering something that I'm quite passionate about. So I actually coach mainly women, but I do coach men as well, who have been through quite a lot of trauma, and much of that is from addiction. So that's what I do. That's what I bring to the table. That's what I bring to the world at the moment.
Okay. You also have a little story of your own that has to do with some addiction and recovery and things of that nature. So would you be open to talk about some of your own experiences?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I grew up in a family that kind of made drugs okay. So it was I was brought up in London, and on a council estate, and we kind of grew up in a household that was predominantly of people using drugs. So naturally, growing up, that was something that I was very used to seeing, very used to being around, and quite used to a lot of people coming and going. So there's just such a different atmosphere, which I've gone on to realize later on in my life that isn't the norm as such. I mean, it was my normal. That's what I knew.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, and quite naturally, I stepped into the world of drugs, and then, obviously just being involved in that, I got to meet some very interesting characters, should I say.
Right. So when you were younger, did you ever think that your family dynamic was strange compared to like any of your friends? Like when you were at friends' houses, were there differences that you were like, wait, my family's a lot different than this? Or was it, were you in similar situations at other people's houses or?
Yeah, I love that question. And I've never been asked that question before, actually. So when I was young, say, I don't know, up until about 9 or 10, I would say no. That's literally what I thought was totally like the norm. I thought everyone just had this in their lives. Like everyone had parents that did this, and everyone lived a life like this. Had absolutely no idea. And then I would say it was secondary school, and it was very difficult because I would have to be selective with who I would be allowed to ask over. Like I couldn't just ask anybody over. There was conditions on that, because obviously if they found out, then the threat was we would be taken away. So I'd have to gauge who was sort of allowed to come into our space. And it was then that I kind of started thinking, oh, wow, okay, this is a bit different, like, because I can just go to my mate's house and then that's it. But that wasn't the case for me, kind of thing.
Oh, wow. So I guess that would be the age where you would kind of clock onto it in secondary school, like hanging out with friends' houses and coming back and forth. If I can ask, your parents, were they doing the drugs? Were they dealing the drugs? What was that type of, or was it a little bit of both? It was just people in and out. I know how that kind of goes because the doors are kind of open and all types of different people are in and out at different hours. And yeah,
I would say both.
Okay.
They were doing both. Yeah.
Did you witness a lot of it growing up, or did they keep it kind of away from you when you were younger? And then maybe when you were older, you saw more of it, or was it? Just
Well, I
kind
think
of
again,
just
I think as a child, because we just think that this is normal, I think that it's not. I mean, how do we know that something's different when it's not?
mm,
And it was only when I realized and I started experiencing other families as I got into my teenage years that I recognized that my family was very different.
mm,
So that was when I noticed it more, but I didn't notice it before because it was normal. So I don't actually think, I'm not saying it's not normal now. It's just not a healthy environment.
right. Um, when did you find yourself interacting with drugs yourself? Like, what age were you?
I was probably 14 or 15 when I started sort of dabbling as such.
Mm,
Again, there was this idea that I felt very excluded because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't smoking. I wasn't, doing all the stuff. So therefore, like, I'm not part of the team. I'm not part of the gang. I want to be part of their tribe. So I kind of stepped into sort of exploring there. But it wasn't until later on, I was probably, I had a little bit of a break because I left home when I was 16. But at that time, my parents actually lived in France. So I actually relocated to the UK again. Yeah, because
mm,
we went traveling as children as well. So I've had quite an interesting upbringing. But yeah, we left London, we went traveling. Then I relocated back here when I was 16. And then I had a baby at 17. So from being a mum to when she was probably, I think, maybe 18 months old, I I kind of had a break from kind of being in the scene. I was, I'd left home. I was more, I wouldn't say I was more stable, but I was certainly not around those types of people. Um, yeah.
and were you living with family when you came back to the UK, or did you find a place of your own? Like, what were your situation? I mean, being that young, I don't imagine it's quite easy to just rent a flat or do any of that with a child as such.
Yeah, so I was staying with family, and
Mm,
then obviously met my boyfriend at the time, and that didn't work out. And then that's when I ended up homeless with I think she was 6 weeks old at that point. So I went through I think it was about a couple of months of just kind of not really knowing where I was going. The council kind of found me a house, a family to stay with,
mm,
which was really useful, but obviously not home and very scary.
yeah.
Being so young with a baby, and obviously most of my family lived abroad at that time as well. So yeah, and then I think because I was so unstable at that time, I think that's when it just led me back down into that road again of finding the people I thought I wanted to be around.
Yeah, was that the thing? Like, you wanted to feel part of something, so you just gravitated towards those people, or like, I guess being young and a mom, you wanted to be out with kids your age, doing the things that you do, and whatever that meant, you were gonna kind of jump
Yeah,
in.
yeah, I definitely think that there was a bit of me being so young that wanted to be young, but obviously had this
Mm,
huge responsibility. I
yeah.
mean, me and her dad split up as well, so yeah, I was very much on my own with her. And I think I did. I just absolutely fought the situation and wanted to belong somewhere, I suppose.
Um, so when you started back with the drugs and stuff, what type of drugs were you using? What was the primary go-to?
The primary go-to was cocaine,
Mm,
um, but that was my drug. Um, but naturally it was kind of a little bit of everything in a pot
everything.
that just sort of
Mm,
happened. But that was the
right.
primary drug. The person I was with at the time was dealing it, so it was very accessible.
At the ready, whenever you
Yeah,
needed it.
and even when I didn't need it, it was there.
Yeah. I guess that was part of the problem as well. You're with somebody who's selling it, and I imagine he was also partaking in it as well.
Oh
So it
yeah,
became like this thing to keep you where you were as well. Like, you do this.
absolutely.
Um,
I mean, he was much older than me as well, which I didn't realize because he lied to me. But yeah, he
oh,
was much older than me, so it was definitely a kind of, if I just get her and keep her here, then she'll stay, and which it did. It worked for 2 years. It was, yeah,
2 years. Oh wow.
long time.
Um, and you were with the child with you the whole time, yeah? Not with family
Yeah,
or friends or anybody. So that's okay. That's a
yeah.
pretty chaotic environment. Um, were you ever afraid at all in the situation, or was it you were too wrapped up in it to really think
I
about the
think
situation?
so. There's two parts of this, and I think you might resonate with this because like there's the sober mind, and then there's the addict mind that comes in. So
Yeah.
there's like the
Hmm.
knowledge that this is not safe, the knowledge that this is going to end badly, or the idea that this is going to end badly, and you've got all that conversation going. But then you've actually got the reality of what our body and mind feels it needs in that point. So there's two ways of kind of looking at
Yeah.
it. In terms of um, my biggest fear was that I would have my daughter taken away from me. That was my biggest fear.
Right.
And we did get busted a couple of times, and those moments were quite tough. So I can remember one morning he was in the kitchen, and they'd sat him on a chair in the middle of the kitchen in handcuffs. And my daughter was upstairs, and I was downstairs, and they bust through the door with the dogs, and they were everywhere, and they went upstairs. And naturally, I went to run upstairs to go and see my daughter. I think she was
Mhm.
probably 2 or 3 at this point, and they wouldn't let me go and see her. And that's when I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is not good. And I can remember saying, look, I just want to get my daughter, and then I want to take her to nursery, and we can get out of here. And they wouldn't let me. They said I had to wait. And then I remember a female police officer sort of coming with me upstairs, and I grabbed her clothes. And before I put her clothes on, they searched her clothes.
Mm.
And I can remember thinking to myself, shit, this is actually real life. Like,
Yeah.
I actually think I'm going to stash drugs on my child. And I'm sure that this happens. So I don't
Oh yeah.
judge them for doing their job. But for me as a mother, in that moment was quite a wake up call for me. And that's no judgment on anybody else who doesn't have that wake up call in that moment. But for me, it did wake me up. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's got to be quite a scary situation. And obviously they're searching it. They're searching everything, and they're searching everywhere. That's got to be a pretty jolting moment to think like, oh, they really think I'm going to put coke on my kid. But I mean, they have to. They have to look at all aspects, right? Um, so after that happened, did you stay? Did you go? What was your next move?
in my head, I can remember thinking at the time, in my head, my limit would be if he started heroin, I would leave. Because I was so scared at that point that I wouldn't be able to say no to that. And I knew that this was already hard enough. So there was this
Hmm.
part of me that was still very much conscious. Um, and he did start heroin, and I did leave for a little while, but I distanced myself because I was addicted to the drug. And without him, I didn't have the drug.
Yeah.
So I slowly distanced myself from him. But that was an extremely difficult process in itself because he was extremely volatile. Um, yeah. And I didn't trust him. I didn't feel safe around him. And in a way, it was kind of, I had to play that game. I chose
Hmm.
to play the game of kind of like, well, if I say I'm with you, but I think it's best I stay here, and then I would meet you. But it was to benefit me as well because I was literally crawling the walls, thinking just need some, please. And I can remember being sat in the park. I had distanced myself from him, and I can remember being sat in the park with my daughter, and I had a bullet, and I can remember sat there doing it on my own, thinking, another shit moment. Like, I'm sat in the park watching my child play on my own, snorting cocaine. Like, this is not fun anymore. This is not just going out and having a line of coke anymore, is it?
Yeah, it's not like fun teenage. Oh, I'm just gonna do a little bit and da, 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 da. When it becomes something that consumes your life, and now, like you said, you're having this moment of realization, like sat in the park, your child's playing, and you're just doing a bump. It's gotta be a weird feeling in itself, I would say. So did you start to think like I need to get help? Like, what were your next steps like into that?
Well, what I did is I moved. So my mum moved back to the UK, so I moved in with my mum, and like I said, I slowly just distanced myself from him. And because I distanced myself slowly, I weaned myself off slowly. I had set my mind up knowing that this was the only option I had. So in my head, I was like, right, if I'm leaving him, then this is the time I have to wean myself off, because this is my only option right now. And slowly but surely, that's what happened. I mean, it did take, I think it took probably a good 6 months for me to do that. And in that time, he was, backwards and forwards, and I think he stole my car one day, and it was a real typical kind of volatile relationship, both mentally and physically.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like it was a really difficult transition in that period to like wean yourself off and then distance yourself. So you said it took about 6 months, and then, I mean, I imagine, like, did he just faded away? Like, he didn't, I mean, I don't know. I just think, like, usually quite volatile and crazy, and like it takes something big for somebody like that to just be like, you know what, I'm done with her. You're not in the guy's probably not in the right state of mind. Like, did he just disappear, or did you have to get really far away to make that happen?
I didn't get too far away. I think I got probably, I think I was about 10 miles away, which did make it difficult for him. But I think actually for him, it was more like he got fed up with me, and that's what I wanted. So so I played it that way, and I knew I was playing the game that way. So I kind of created a scenario where he would get fed up with me, and then, the situation. Yeah. I'm going to cough on really 2 seconds.
No, sorry.
I've got a real tickle. You can cut that out.
No, we leave in all the fun stuff, the noises, the bumps, the creaks. That's fine. Listen, I literally have the creakiest chairs in the world in my kitchen, so they make so much noise. And this microphone picks up everything.
Does it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't make any noise, or I can't move, actually. I just sit here.
You're just seized in one place.
Yeah. I'm locked up, top to bottom, just trapped in this position. The one time I did a podcast, and at the end of it, my shoulders and back were all seized up and sore, because I was just sat trying to be so, like, not moving. So after that brief tirade and cough, so yeah, so you get away from him. What happens then? Do you like, are you completely off the stuff, or are you still weaning? Like, where are you at with it?
So what I did in the process of weaning myself off him and the drug was I decided to do a course. So I decided to go back to kind of learning, and at that same time, I ended up. I don't know if you're familiar with the Prince's Trust, but in the UK, but it's an amazing charity that supports young people who have basically kind of not. I went on the enterprise program, so it was for young people under the age of 25, I think, or maybe 30, who wanted to do something with their lives, but kind of didn't really have the skills to do it. So I left school with no qualifications. I mean, I think I turned up drunk from one of my GCSEs and wrote my name on the paper and walked out again. So, you know, I didn't have any form of sort of qualification. So what I did is that at the time when I was kind of leaving him, I started this course, and I ended up it was almost kind of exactly the same sort of timings. As that ended, I ended this course, but what the course meant was I was given a grant and I was given some support.
Oh,
I think there was about a month overlap actually, because I can remember I got a lump sum of money which helped me buy a car, because I'd managed to pass my test when I was a few years before. I don't know how I'd managed to do that, but I got my test in, and they gave me some money, a grant, so I bought myself a car. And the overlap was that he got arrested when I was still with him and had a load of money on him, and he said, without me knowing, he said it was mine. And obviously, so the police called me and said, you know, we've arrested him. He's got all this money on him. He says it's yours. So I then said straight away, yeah, it's mine. I just got it from the course. Of course it wasn't. So there was many times that things like that happened, that I bailed him out without just, yeah. So there was a slight overlap, but then again, because I had the car, it meant that suddenly I was mobile. Suddenly I had more kind of control of my life. It felt like I could get away.
Yeah.
And then I did get, I got qualified to get a house. So I got given a house. And that was probably my scariest moment, actually, is moving into the house by myself with my daughter, because I knew he was spying on me, and I knew he could, I knew he was kind of keeping an eye on me. And that was really scary, because I didn't know what he was going to do. And, you know, we had some terrible fights, you know, where the police were called, the ambulance were called, and it was quite one of those.
Yeah. You don't know if he's going to kick your door down and come in and
Exactly.
burn the fucking place down or whatever.
Yeah. So that was quite nerve-wracking.
I mean, it's nerve-wracking moving into any place on your own, I would imagine. Getting a house on your own, it's always stressful. But I mean, that added on top of it, that there's a crazy ex on drugs that could come kick your door down, probably doesn't make it any easier.
No, and as you know, like, it's not just him, it's who he knows.
Oh, yeah. He might not even show up. He might send a couple guys to your house to break in or steal all your shit or whatever.
Yeah, it was really scary. But I had a business which I grew while I was building at the same time through this course, and that's what really kind of gave me that inner, like, oh, actually, I can do this. Like, I'm not a waste of space. Like, I can do this thing called life. Like, I don't have to just be like this in the corner. Like, I do have options here, and I'm worthy of them.
That's the most important thing, is that you know your worth, that you have value in yourself, you know, that you can do these things and that you can achieve the goals you set for yourself, and you don't have to be numb and disconnected and alone doing anything. You can have a good life. So you do the course, you're building the business. What happens then? What kind of business was it, by the way?
It was actually a cleaning company. So I had a cleaning agency which had like 20 cleaners that worked for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I loved that business so much. I ran it for 11 years. It was the business that kind of built my foundation. You know, I managed to buy out my first house with my now ex-husband, but husband at the time. It was the business that got me through bringing up another 2 children. So yeah, it was a brilliant business. It's since gone, because it sort of ended when my marriage ended, which is a story for another day. But naturally, as you can imagine, we attract who we are. And, I was still very much in a very vulnerable state myself. So
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't done any sort of deep healing at that point, and I was very much living in the space of, fear. I was just scared, I think. I was a scared, lonely little girl inside, I think.
Trying to deal with everything in your life without doing drugs, which is when people probably think it's crazy when you say stuff like, "Oh, I have to deal with real life." Like, you have to deal with, I have to deal with it. And I don't know what that's like. When I drank, I escaped from everything. I ran from everything. I didn't want to have to deal with any of that shit. And then when you get sober and like life happens, you have to kind of figure out like, well, your only coping skill was like drinking or drugs. Now you got to be like, how do I process this? What does this feel like? How do I express my emotions normally?
Yeah.
It's crazy to learn that. You have to learn it all over again because most people just do it. They just do it normally, and
Yeah.
we have to kind of like figure it out.
Yeah, I think as well, that's such a good point, because it's not just a case of figuring it out, but it's also like the understanding that when we were young, that was probably not safe to do that. It was probably not safe to express ourselves in that way, like
Yeah.
to be vulnerable. So once we kind of come out the other side of this journey, how the hell are we supposed to be? Like, who am I? Because I'm not that. I'm not what I was doing, but I'm also
No.
not who I was before that, because that led me to that. So who the hell am
Yeah.
I? So it's a
You're like,
real
yeah,
journey.
you're like a new person. You're like a new person that has pieces of old person that was you, and then who is new. You have to figure out who new you is and what those pieces, how those pieces fit. I always found that like that was like a thing for me. It's like I am who I was before I drank. I'm that person that my mom raised, but I'm not. I'm just like bits and pieces of the parts in between in the drinking, and then outside of it, when I got sober, I had to build who I am now. Like, what does that look like, and how do I put those pieces together? Because it's like when you take like a big puzzle and you just like dump it out on the counter, and you have all these pieces everywhere, and you got to start finding those edge pieces, you know, to put it all together. So you build your edge in your frame, and then you're like, oh, I wonder what this looks like inside. A little bit of before, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, until the
You know
puzzle
what?
is kind of complete.
Yeah, that really resonates, and I think the thing that really stuck out with me there is when you get to that point in the puzzle and you can't find that bit, and you get really frustrated, and
Yeah.
that's the bit for me in my journey where that's when I step in with that love and compassion for myself. That's when I
Mm.
can approach myself with the kind of, it's okay. It's okay that you're frustrated. It's okay that you feel the way you do right now. I still have moments now, and I think I said to my boyfriend earlier, like, actually, I'm having one of those weeks this week. It's really fucking tough, and it doesn't mean I want to run back and do something, but what it means is that I'm recognizing that, there's a full moon going on, so that for starters is bonkers. Like, it is really playing some stuff with me. But there's also like, I'm human. My mind goes crazy at points, and
Yeah.
being able to sit with or in the knowledge that that's what we do as humans, and also coming in from a place of love and compassion for myself, and going, okay, yeah, this week I'm just going to be really, really kind to myself, because my voice is loud. It's really loud inside there right now, and I'm going to just be with that and just give it some love.
That's that kind of resonated with me. I went through a really shitty end to my Jan. My January was rough. I was sick at the beginning of it. We had a family. All of us had a sickness bug. I had my passing of my mom's anniversary, and I just was having a really, really tough month. I was really struggling to get through it. And my mom's passing anniversary is my sober date,
Wow.
and my dad's birthday.
Wow.
and my dad's no longer with me. It's like this crazy, yeah. So it's like it has all this like, it's like really
Energy.
wrapped in emotion, really a
Yeah.
lot of like strong emotions. Like I want to feel
Yeah.
great because I'm celebrating 12 years of sobriety, but I'm also
Amazing.
mourning the 9 years I
Yeah.
don't have my mom and like my dad's birthday. It's just like a crazy day. I just got in a real dark place, and I think like what I could probably take from what you're saying is I need to be kinder to myself and love myself a little bit more on in those times, or you know work on being more self-aware of what's happening, and just trying to stay more positive, because I got really dark for a while, and that was rough because it's really tough to come out of those situations because with a little bit of motivation and stuff. So I definitely liked what you were saying there.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. Like those 3 dates together are just it's huge. And that's
Yeah.
nothing to be shunned. Like that I mean, if you met someone who just told you that story and was like, "Do you know what? Like January, there was a date where, my mum passed, I got sober, it was my dad's birthday. It's a pretty shitty day." I mean, I'm pretty sure that that person would go, "Do you want a hug?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And for some reason, we don't do that for ourselves.
No.
And actually, like in that moment, like, yeah, like you've got the celebration. Yeah, I'm so proud of myself for doing that, but I'm sad as well. And do you know what? I can be sad. I can feel
Yeah.
that
It's
sad.
okay to be. Yeah. It's okay to be sad. It's all right to be.
It's not
Yeah.
failing. It's not going back to square one. I meet so many people and it's like this, I can't feel that way. I have to stay positive. No, you don't. No, you absolutely don't. And I know that might be contrary to what most people say. Oh, if you just come from this, but no, like that's not where I come from. I come from this place of humanity where we experience our emotions for a reason. And if we allow them to be and allow them to flow and actually feel them as they come and as they go, then they won't stick around. If we resist them, they will stick because they want to be seen and they want to be held and they want to be heard. And by hugging them and giving them that time and that space will allow them to flow through us much more freely without getting stuck, and then us having our opinion on the fact that we shouldn't be feeling this way, because that just adds a whole layer of shit that does not need to be there.
Yeah. Honestly, I couldn't agree more. Like that's hearing it said out loud though, and then doing it, and like hearing somebody else say it and then having to do it on yourself when you're not feeling as great.
Oh, it's
It's a
huge.
tough situation. Yeah. um so you got into coaching, and let's just talk about your coaching for a minute. What got you into coaching, and why? What was the driving force behind all that?
So I've had such an amazing journey with my coaching. I think it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I was like, I really want to be a counselor, a therapist, something like that. And I went to go or, apply for these courses, and they said, you don't have any GCSEs on your bike.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you for real? I've run 2 businesses over the past, or more than probably 2 businesses over the past 15 years of my life. I've got 3 children. I've got, I have my own house. Like, and you're
Yeah.
telling me I have to sit and do these exams? Like, this is ridiculous. So I thought, well, I am one of those people that if someone says no, I find a way. So I found a different way, and I thought, actually, this delaying is not delaying. So I thought that, oh, okay, I can't do it now, but I'll do it eventually. So there was a time kind of difference. But
Hmm.
actually, this was the biggest gift for me, because what it did is it gave me the gift of healing. So just by me stepping into my healing, then led me on to being around the people that, for example, my coach, who's absolutely amazing. I can remember one of the first sessions we had. He said to me, "You're a light worker. Like you've been brought here to go through this shit, to heal it and heal others." And I was like, he didn't quite say it like that. It was a much more kinder delivery and with no pressure as well. He wasn't telling me what I should or shouldn't do, but it really, the message resonated with me, and I just thought, actually, this is it. Like, this is my calling. And I just stepped into it more, and I did a couple of courses, and I got trauma informed and just did the things. And now it's never a day's work. It's just pure pure joy, not joy, but gratitude that I have sitting with these people that effectively are struggling and stuck. And
Mm.
I know how that feels. I know how that feels, and it's really shitty. So to be able to sit with people and offer them a space that there's no judgment, it's safe, and together we work through it.
Do you think like coaching is a better form of working with people in recovery than, say, I don't know, because you go to like recovery specialists and things like that, and but there's all type of certain you know uh, formal things that people are hired for. Do you think it's a more beneficial route for people that want to get into recovery, or that it's more helpful?
I believe everything has its place, and I have, you name it, I've probably done it. The therapy, the hypnotherapy, the EFT. I've probably done most of the modalities that are out there, and I think that everything has something of value for somebody. But I
Mm.
do think that it's up to the individual to work out what works for them. And there's an expiry date to it. So, for example, I was in therapy for maybe a year, and then at the end of that, I was like, this isn't giving me anything else. I want
Mm.
to further this. This is just as I got to the point, and it was literally just like a broken record, and I wasn't moving forward with my journey. There was things that I was just still stuck on with my healing that I just couldn't break. And that's when I kind of stepped into coaching and being coached. And it comes from a slightly different, there's the inner child healing. It touches on much more um, than say a counsellor or therapist could potentially cover. So it does go a little bit deeper. And I was ready for that. But that's not to say that someone just coming out of, or in recovery is ready for that, So it's
Mm.
a real personal journey, and you can't get it wrong. Just go with what you feel works for you, and then if it doesn't, and you've outgrown it, then move on to something else.
I think like especially in like recovery and stuff like that, is that there's no right way to recover. There's multiple journeys. People do different things, and it's like find out what suits you best, what's working for you, and that kind of helps people. Because I think everybody thinks that like recovery is like a 12-step program, but it's different for everybody. Everybody does different shit.
100%.
My journey is different than your journey, but we both share a common thing, that we have a problem, we have an addiction, we have an issue. But it's just everybody goes different directions. So I think it's really great that there are like different forms of help out there for people. And I think coaching's quite beneficial for certain people that want to really explore that lane and go that route. Um, what do you think the hardest thing about coaching is for you?
The hardest thing, do you know, I had a conversation today with somebody, and they asked me if I debrief. So they asked me if I have some downtime, because I hear some really heavy stories, like some
Hmm.
people have gone through some stuff. And I can remember one of my first ever coaching sessions. I won't go into it, but I came off the call and it really triggered me. It was to
Hmm.
do with sexual abuse, and that
Hmm.
is very close to my heart. And I got really, really super triggered. And I can remember getting off that call, bursting into tears. I voice messaged my coach, and we, he was, yeah, we did our thing. And I think that's probably a difficult moment, but it's also a gift. Like
Hmm.
because it shows me where I'm still very much being driven by something that's happened to me. So it's an opportunity, although it might feel difficult, it's an opportunity for me to explore it further. So it's
Mm.
also a gift. It might feel uncomfortable and it is difficult, and I might have, these moments of going, oh, actually, this has brought something up for me. But then that also, like I said, that's my gateway. That's my gateway into exploring that deeper and finding out, okay, what's going on? What part
Mm.
of me still isn't okay with this? And what part of me is still waking up suffering? And yeah.
It's an interesting way to look at it. I had a similar thing that I was doing. I was in America. I was going to become a recovery specialist. I was going to these classes, and I was doing it. I was about 3 or 4 weeks into it, and there was this guy that was there. And I don't know why, but the way he was back talking and being very like this and that about the things that they were trying to teach us, and kind of triggered me in a way. I got really uncomfortable being there. So I ended up stop going because I was like, I don't want to, I get frustrated every time I saw him. And it was something about what he was doing just really bothered me in my recovery. And I was
Mm,
like, you know what? I can't do this. But I never looked at it like, why? Like, what was the thing that he was doing that really, because it was something, and it was something big enough that made me say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go back to those classes because I was really passionate. I really wanted to go and do something to help people in recovery
yeah.
um, for a long time. And then it was like, I don't want to do that. If that's what it's going to be like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, especially when we're still in that vulnerable state and we kind of don't quite feel confident. Maybe we don't understand where our boundary is with people, and with ourselves, more importantly, because boundaries are about ourselves, not about the other person. So
Mm,
this person could literally, it could cover so much. I mean, especially when we're talking about addiction, if someone's come up to you at some point in your life and said to you, you have to do this, and you were on drugs and you didn't feel like it, but you did it anyway, then suddenly that's alarm bells. Like, he's linked to this drug recovery. He's now
mm,
coming in saying something like that. You're going, oh, no, 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 this means that I'm going to fail. Like, there's so many angles, and without, obviously we're not going to go deep and go into it now, but there's so many angles of
yeah.
what that could have come from. Might have even just been like a father thing, as a
Mm,
child. Like, whoa, don't tell me what to do. I don't like being told what to do. That's a big one. So
yeah.
it could have been
But it
anything.
was
But the,
it was just one of those weird things that like triggered me. I knew it triggered me. I got really uncomfortable about it. It was just really weird because I never looked into it. For obviously, it was just like, well, I just want to do that then. I'll just do
yeah,
that.
yeah. But you've done full circle anyway, because that's you're still doing something that you wanted to do anyway. So
Exactly. Well, I've created my own way of trying to help people in recovery. And I've also, like, with the huge benefit of doing this is I've met some really amazing people who are offering some really amazing things to people in recovery, which I think is probably the most rewarding bit is to be able to share their, like to share your coaching and to share, what you're doing to help people because, that's really what it's all been about from the beginning was to be able to showcase what people are doing and also to showcase people's journeys as well, that they went from that to this. And
yeah,
not to say that this is perfect or this is great. I mean, we all have struggles in our daily lives, you know, but
yeah.
we've definitely come from a better, I mean, I imagine you would have to agree that you are in a way better place than you were when you were younger and you were on drugs.
I'm literally living a life I never ever thought was ever going to be available for me to live. You know,
Yeah.
we've recently moved and bought a house again, and we're extending it, and this was a dream once, but beyond that, it was never a possibility as far as I was concerned. So
Mm,
yeah, I mean, the fact that I've put myself in a position where I've healed myself to a point where I can now sit with others is the biggest gift I've gifted myself. And
mm,
yeah, there is definitely, there is life after this, and there's a form of commitment to ourselves that is required for us to do this. You know, it doesn't happen without that commitment. It's not, you know, unfortunately we can't just take a pill and wake up one day and it goes away. And if we could, my God, I'd be dishing them out because it's shit. But actually the journey itself to get to now teaches us so much, and the quality and the lessons and everything that's kind of compacted into that learning is a forever life lesson. Like, it's like a backpack full of tools that we have at any point that we can kind of just use. Like I said earlier, you know, this week it's been a tough week for me, and I've been like, you know, I came home early. I was like, right, I'm doing a body scan. Like, I'm just going to go up for half an hour and I'm just going to spend some time with myself and do a body scan, because my mind is wild today, and give myself some grace for that.
Oh, it's really good that you can do that. Like, just give yourself some time, reboot your system. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing with us. Is there anything you have coming up that you'd like to chat about, like that you'd like to let the listeners know what's going on with Coaching with Jodie?
Thank you. Well, I'm always on my socials, so if anyone wants to join me over there, I'm on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram mainly. Come and say hi. My little community is kind of growing every day, which is so great. I share so much on there for free. You know, I do a reel every day, and I also do a post every day, and it's all just great information stuff that really supports anybody in their kind of healing journey and healing through trauma. And as we know, most addictions are based and stem from some form of trauma that's happened. So Absolutely. If we can go back and give some love to that, both somatically and in the mind, then it makes life a whole lot easier.
Do you have any of your handles like readily available that you could give out, like so that people can reach you? Or I mean, I'm going to put it all on the video links and everything. So whatever you send me, I will attach to the link. So if you guys are interested, it will be all in the links on the YouTube, and it'll be on the Spotify links as well. I'll include all of them.
Yeah. So it's just at Coaching with Jodie. I've managed to get them all, which is wonderful.
Oh, there you go. That's so easy. Lucky you. Lucky you.
No.
I went through a thing where I was like, well, how am I going to do my socials? And then like 2 of them are different. And I was just like, oh, what have I done? I've got 2 different ones. So I was like, what are you doing? Yeah. Then it's confusing because somebody asks you and you're like, I don't really know. I don't know what they are. Sorry. I'm just on them. I don't really know what they are. I don't remember them. Yeah. So at least yours are all the same, and they're quite simple to just blurb out there and be like, bam, here you go. So before I end my show, I like to ask a question about 3 things that you need in your recovery. So 3 things that are just like, those are the tools you go to, you know, to get your head right.
Okay. Okay. So, do you know, this is such a difficult question. I wish I could just say 3 things. Because it's going to be different for everybody. But for me, and I'm only going to say for me, it would be space.
That's one.
It would be self-love.
That's 2.
And it would be forgiveness.
That's 3.
So it's not things, it's feelings.
Yeah, but it's feelings, but it's something, right? I'm just, what the whole point of this whole thing, 3 things I ask everybody, because I thought, what's better than having the knowledge of all these people come together, and you can pick and choose from the one of the 3 things that they said. You know, some people say journaling. Mine is like running or the gym. Like, now you have all these things you can just pick and choose, and you can put that in your little recovery bag, and there you go. You can learn from all these guests, all my guests on the show, and just maybe take something like, you know, nice little nugget away with you.
Yeah. Forgiveness was a huge one for me because of my daughter.
Yeah.
You know, I had to dig really deep to forgive myself for what I chose to put her through.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go to a deeper spiritual level, we can say she chose me as her mum to go through this journey, but there's a lot of people that might not resonate with that just yet. So effectively, you know, that's the journey I took, and she came along with me, and she saw a lot, you know, and I was not the best mum in the world. So forgiveness was a big one for me. And once I did that for myself, wow, my life
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a huge thing, like to be able to forgive yourself, to be able to, it's like um it's like that moment when you admit that you have a problem, like admitting not just like everybody else, but like in here, in there, saying um something's wrong, you know.
Mm.
That moment, it's like a big epiphany, and I imagine like forgiving yourself is similar to that, like forgiving that situation and really meaning it. Very freeing.
So freeing. And like I said, it took a lot of work. It's not something that we can just kind of go, oh yeah, you know, that's it, it's done. It's, you know, I went back and I felt what I did, and I
Yeah,
understood what I did, and I came from this non-judgment, you know, like that's what I knew, and that was my only way to get through those days at the time. And it's not that I'm using an excuse, but it's understanding that my programming at that point led me to there. That's how I was functioning. So,
yeah,
and I'm not doing that now. So it's like I'm not just kind of making an excuse and repeating the behavior. And
yeah,
also, we do that. There's still no, that's still not wrong if we do repeat the behavior, because it just means that we've still got some work to do. But my point is that there's not an excuse for this. This is reality. Like, we are programmed in a certain way, and we behave in accordingly to that program. So until we update that programming, that's why we continue to repeat.
all right. I mean, that is it. You just get stuck in that cycle, and you just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's all you know.
Yeah.
Um, well, Jodie, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you do. I think it's great that you're out there helping people and coaching people through the traumatic events that they've experienced in life. Um, and hopefully, this podcast, like we said when we were chatting before we went, all it has to do is hit that one, doesn't it? It just has to hit the one. So that's what we'll aim for. We're going to hit the one, all right?
Yeah, 100%. I got you.
All right. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. It's been awesome, and well done for doing what you're doing too.
Thank you.